Now, it's no secret that the Knicks have not been good for about the past 20 or so years. A large factor to their unsuccessful seasons has of course been impatience. They traded away picks that became Joakim Noah and LaMarcus Aldridge for guys like Eddie Curry. Now, today I'm going to be talking about what I think the Knicks should do throughout the 2018 offseason. It's a very, very influential offseason towards the future of the Knicks. And today I'm going to be breaking down the moves that I think the Knicks should be necessarily making throughout the offseason to progressively build towards the future that they need. Well, of course, first up in the NBA offseason for the Knicks is going to be the NBA draft. Now, the Knicks own the 9th pick in the draft, and at that 9th pick, the best player available, who I think the Knicks should draft, is most likely going to be a small forward anyways, the position they need most. Now, regardless if it's one or the other, the Knicks will most likely be selecting Miles or Mikal Bridges from MSU and Villanova. But they're both small forwards and both guys that the Knicks have heavily targeted throughout the past couple months. I'm not going to pinpoint exactly just one prospect that I think the Knicks will pick, but there's a good chance that Mikal Bridges goes before the 9th pick. So if he does, then I'd say that they pick Miles, but otherwise I think they pick Mikal. There has been murmurings that some people in the organization do see more in Miles than they do in Mikal. But nonetheless, I'm going to leave this pick up to the comments to decide because they're very similar players. They both play small forward, and whether I draft one or the other in this video is not going to very much affect the rest of the decisions made throughout the offseason. Now, at number 2 for my offseason plan for the Knicks, I'd say that you have to let Enes Kanter walk at the offset of his contract, which seems very likely up to this point. Now, Kanter's a good player for what he brings to the table, but he's not worthy of hindering the whole Knicks future just because they want to re-sign him. He is worth the money that he's most likely going to get, which is around $16 million or so, maybe even more considering he'd opt out of his contract. But really, I don't think it's a good idea for the Knicks to lock him in long term when they really want to make bigger decisions than this one, in the near future, I'd say. At number 3 for the Knicks offseason plans, I'd say that you'd have to bring back Kyle O'Quinn if he does opt out of his player option this offseason for about $5.7 million per year over 3 years, which roughly is about $17 million total. And this is simply because the Knicks are pretty short on centers after losing Kanter in the last step. And also, Kyle O'Quinn has been a pretty great player for them over the past couple seasons. His first season was kind of rough, but he lost a lot of weight, became a more athletic player, a better defensive player, better rebounder, better overall player for the Knicks. And it would make sense to bring him back to his hometown. He shows a lot of effort for this Knicks team, regardless of the situation he's in. And you also up his contract a little bit and give him long-term money, so I don't see why he would decline this. Even if he does get even more money from another team, I feel like he'd give up some money to stay with the Knicks because of how much he loves his city. At number 4 for the offseason plans, this one's kind of tough because obviously he became a huge fan favorite throughout his year in New York. He's gained nicknames such as the Walking Bucket and the Goat of New York. But you have to get rid of Michael Beasley. Now, this is in large part due to not being able to move Courtney Lee this summer, although it would be smart for the Knicks to move the 32-year-old Lee because he doesn't fit the timeline of the Knicks. That results in not being able to re-sign Beasley either if you're really trying to make long-term moves. Now, I don't think Beasley would take a 1-year deal to stay in New York because there's not much promise to stay in New York for next year considering how bad the team is expected to be. So Beasley would most likely go and sign for another team for more money. I'd say the Knicks at max would offer him about $8 million for 1 or 2 years. But even with that, I probably wouldn't want to lock him up for 2 years with the plans that the Knicks have going. If Courtney Lee was movable, I'd say you could bring back Beasley for about a year or two. But in this case, with the situation the team is in, you have to just let Beasley walk, honestly. Now at number 5, I believe we're at right now, I would say the Knicks should bring in a young athletic wing type of guy like a Glenn Robinson III. You could get Glenn Robinson probably for about $3 million or less for a 1-year deal, and I just bring him on just to save salary cap and also just test to see what he could do. He missed a lot of last season with an ankle injury, but personally, I'd give him a shot just because the Knicks have nothing to lose and he probably will be a cheap player. He's an unrestricted free agent, and the Knicks can easily pick him up and slot him in at a backup small forward position. Now at number 6, I'd like to just point out the Knicks should utilize their 2-way contracts. I'm 100% sure they will. It's a good way for teams to try out players that don't count towards the salary cap, and they also don't count towards the roster spots, so you could add up to 17 players, including the 2-way players. Well, I'm assuming the Knicks will use those up, and I'm assuming also that the players will most likely get time on the roster, considering the roster that I'm building right now. I'm not going to distinctly point out 2 players that the Knicks would bring on under their 2-way contracts, but regardless, it'll probably be 2 undrafted players, most likely a wing and a big man. And at number 7 for the Knicks offseason plans, This one is a little bit more controversial than others, but don't stretch your contract of Joakim Noah. Now, I know this is a little bit against what Scott Perry and Steve Mills want to do, but I feel like it'd be stupid to hinder the Knicks' long-term plans even more by stretching Noah's contract until I believe 2023, paying him $7 million per year, and instead just get the 2 years over with. Get him out of here in 2020 and use his money then. In case you don't realize how long the contracts last when you stretch a contract, the Pistons are still paying Josh Smith $5 million per year. I believe it might end this year, but nonetheless, he's been off the team for so many years. And in case you didn't realize, at number 8, I never mentioned the 36th pick that the Knicks have in the draft. I think with this pick, the Knicks should go for a big man because that's a position now that they'll lack at after drafting a small forward. And personally, I think you should aim for a guy like Moritz Wagner or Mo Wagner from Michigan. He'll most likely still be there around 36. Or just in general, another big man that'll probably drop to the second round. Now, after these offseason moves that I've went through, the Knicks roster for the 2018-19 season would look like Frank Ntilikina at the point guard, Tim Hardaway Jr. at the shooting guard, Miles and Mikal Bridges at the small forward, Lance Thomas at the power forward, and Kyle O'Quinn at the center. With off the bench at point guard, you'd have Emmanuel Mudiay and Trey Burke. At the shooting guard, you'd have Ron Baker and Damian Dotson, as well as Courtney Lee. At the small forward, you would have Glenn Robinson III and Troy Williams. At the power forward, you'd have Mo Wagner. And at the center, you'd have Joakim Noah. Obviously, Kristaps Porzingis is the man who completes the 15-man roster, but, you know, he's injured. And he's going to be injured for probably the majority of the season. Now, obviously, this roster is not one of the more prolific teams in the league. Probably one of the worst teams in the league, if we're being honest here. With Tim Hardaway Jr. most likely leading the team in scoring. You do at least get to show off guys like Mikal or Miles Bridges at the small forward, and Frank Ntilikina gets an increased role. But obviously the 2018-19 season was not the one I was completely looking towards when making this team up, because Kristaps is going to be injured anyway, so we're probably not going to make the playoffs. Now, throughout the 18-19 season, you're going to have $9.5 million in cap space available, and that could be used to a potential re-signing of Trey Burke to a long-term extension throughout the season, depending on how he's playing. He's only making $1.3 million right now for next season, and after next season, he'll be off the books. Now, going into the 2019 offseason, the Knicks are going to have $34 million in cap room, not including a Trey Burke re-signing throughout the season. Or not, because they kind of have to re-sign Kristaps Porzingis. Now you're probably thinking, well, that only leaves the team with about, like, let's just say $6 to $2 million in cap space after re-signing Porzingis for, I'd say, about $28 to $32 million. That's also the offseason that Perry and Mills have been targeting, which is why they've also considered stretching Joakim Noah's contract. In my case, though, I think that it'd be smarter for them to actually just skip over that offseason as a whole and move on to further offseasons, because that offseason, it's kind of unrealistic to have so much money, considering the contracts that they have under their team already. Now, just for time's sake, let's skip over the whole 19-20 season and whatever the Knicks do throughout the season. When you move to the 2020 offseason, the money situation starts to get pretty interesting. So during the 2020 offseason, the Knicks will have Frank Ntilikina under contract for $6 million, Tim Hardaway Jr. under contract for $19 million. Let's say that the Knicks re-sign KP and he's getting $32 million per year, so we'll add that onto there. Then we'll say that they even re-signed Trey Burke and give him a $7.5 million per year extension. And following those contracts, we'd still also have Kyle O'Quinn under contract for $5.7 million per year. And also Miles or Mikal Bridges would still be making $4 million per year for the Knicks, so add that on there. And then I'd also say that the Knicks got another lottery pick in 2019, so you'd add him on there too. We could even add on the fact that the Knicks had $4 million to expend in the prior offseason. So you could add that on there too, right? Say that they signed those guys to multi-year deals and they still have that under the contract too. With all that said, the Knicks are still relieving the contracts of Courtney Lee, Joakim Noah, and Lance Thomas. And knowing that, the Knicks will have $37 million in spare cap space throughout the 2020 offseason. Now, whoever the Knicks will sign in 2020, that's up for you to decide, because I'm just here to discuss what the 2018 offseason does and how it affects the future for the Knicks. Personally, though, I feel like the route that I'm saying in this video would probably be the route that I'd want the Knicks to take 100% throughout these next couple of years. And let me know if you agree with me in the comments. And also drop a like on this video, because this took a lot of work to make this and a lot of research. So that's about it, though. Let me know who you think the Knicks should sign in 2020, if you agree with everything I said in this video or what you disagree with. And that's about it. Cut.